to Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. My name is Dov Barron. I'm your host. I want to thank you for joining us on this particular video version of the show. And of course, this is part of the Full Monty Leadership series. And today I'm here with my special guest, Golden Gordon. Let's try that. Golden Gordon Tredgold, because he's double gold. Gordon Tredgold, who is the founder of Leadership Principles. And you can find him, of course, online at leadershipprinciples.com. Also on his name, which is Gordon, Tredgold.com, GordonTredgold.com. He's the author of the book, Leadership is a Marathon, Not a Sprint. And he has a brand new book coming out called Fast, which apparently is in now negotiations with several publishers who are fighting to the death to make sure that they get Gordon under their house. So, welcome, Gordon. Good to have you here, mate.
Thank you very much. And just a quick point, I am from Yorkshire, the home of the Full Monty.
You are indeed, yes. He's actually from the home of where that movie was set, a place called Yorkshire. And you may notice that Gordon has a slight accent, which is actually slightly different than mine, even though we are probably, how far apart? 40 miles?
Manchester.
Yeah, Salford.
Yeah. 40 miles. I actually lived in Salford.
There you go. Well, God bless you for that, and I'm sure it was a wonderful experience. So this just shows you 40 miles, and the UK is an amazing place, because for me, I think the UK, I've talked about this before, is a great metaphor for what goes on in corporations, because in corporations we get silos. And in silos, we don't talk to the other silo. We don't talk to the other department. And we grow on our own and don't become unified. And it's really fascinating because I had friends who were from places like Oldham. My best friend was from Oldham, which was 12 miles away from where I lived. And his accent was completely different than mine. Now, my accent's very different than where I came from, too. But that isolation, that cloistering that goes on in a lot of the, I still see the UK, and actually Manhattan too, New York, as very much a place of villages. And I think it's just a wonderful metaphor for what goes on in business.
It's interesting as well, because I'm from Leeds, and my uncle's from Rothwell, which is about 11 miles away, and it takes me 15 minutes before I can understand him. I mean, because it's a much broader Yorkshire accent. And what's also interesting is that you're from Lancashire, I'm from Yorkshire, two immense rivals, Absolutely. War of the Roses. We hate each other until it comes to North v South, at which point we're best friends.
Exactly, yeah. And so again, another great metaphor of what's going on in the U.S. right now. You're our enemy, but if we're going against these guys, you're my best friend.
Absolutely.
Leadership is screwed. As two leadership guys, we can honestly say that looking at it in the broad spectrum, it's kind of goosed, and it really needs a bit of a colonics.
It does indeed, yeah.
So you've got leadership principles. Tell us. I mean, that seems to me like a broad picture. Tell us what drives leadership principles for you. What is it about what it is you do? Because you write quite differently than a lot of people. When I write my blogs, they're articles. They're several pages long. You have a very different approach.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I wanted to write, but I never started, because my English teacher gave me some great advice, and she said, "You're really good at maths. Focus on that. Do not look to make a living as a writer, because you will starve." So I always felt I couldn't write. And out of England we have Shakespeare and Dickens, and you look at them and you think, yeah, you're right, I can't write. But I read a lot of Ken Blanchard, and I really like his simple approach, and I thought, well, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to write 400 to 500 words where people could read it, understand it, and then actually go and do something with it. So I wrote a blog, for example, in January, How to Improve Your Leadership in 2015. 4 simple tips. Smile more, listen more, talk more, praise more. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And I might have written a couple of sentences about what I meant with each one, but that was it. And I think that, for me, that's practical. That's pragmatic Yorkshire Northern advice.
Yeah. Let's not muck about, lad. Get into it.
That's, that's how my dad would tell you what needs to be done.
Right.
I mean, I used to play rugby, and it was very simple. When you get on pitch, make sure you nobble their scrum half and get him out at game. And that was it. Very simple, practical advice. And that's what I try to offer people. And I can't write big words anyway, so...
I'm sorry, I can't spell a word that's over 7 letters, so I'm sticking to really simple stuff.
Well, I read a leadership book, and I don't want to say what it was called, but the word simple was in the title. And I have a degree in mathematics. I'm a pretty smart guy. And I read chapter 1 4 times. And I thought, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Right.
And I ended up putting that book down. And it was called something like Simply Leadership or Leadership Made Simple. And what I find is a lot of experts, they want to prove that they're a genius by being able to talk in such levels of complexity. You think, wow, I've no clue what he said, but he must be really smart.
He must be smart because he can use those big words.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It must be smart. Whereas I take, that kind of Einstein's, if you can't explain it, then you don't understand it. And I want people to read my stuff and think, oh, I understood that. Now they're smart. Mm-hmm. It's about making me feel smart, not about making me feel smart. I've had massive success with 18 to 30-year-olds. Millennials seem to really like it. It makes leadership accessible to them. I got a really nice compliment where somebody said to me, what I like about your writing is you show how magical leadership can be, and then you show us the tips on how to perform that magic.
That's fabulous.
I thought, that's what I'd like to be remembered for. If you're going to be a leadership coach, an expert, our job should be to disseminate leadership wisdom, not to complicate it and make ourselves look geniuses.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think that one of the points is just that. As you know, I'm also a leadership mentor. I work with leaders in all kinds of capacities. But one of the things that I find is very few are openly willing to admit their own insecurities. And I don't care. You're human. You've got insecurities. You've got stuff you got to deal with. Whether it's you don't like the shape of your belly, or whether it's you're not sure about how you speak, or whether it's you're not even sure what it is you do. I think we all. I was talking to a leader the other day who said to me, I'm really not sure. And I said, what? And I just interrupted. I said, you feel like a fraud. and she looked at me and she said, yeah, that's it. I do. And I said, fantastic. And she said, what? I said, fantastic. I said, everybody I know who is truly successful feels like a fraud. And I said, not successful, truly successful. She said, why? I said, because none of us take it for granted. No. We're always clear about there's something else to know. There's a deeper level to go to. We can do that. The challenge with that is if we don't admit it, then we start trying to prove we're not a fraud. And the distinction with that is then we're using all the big words. We're trying to create complexity instead of simplicity. So I think you're absolutely right.
It's interesting you say that because I felt that as well. And I think one of the things through my corporate career, when you got promoted, you're always a little bit nervous. But once you've been at that table for 3, 6, 9 months, you realize that everybody else is actually just as nervous as you are. And you have to get comfortable with it. And interestingly, both of us were in the Inc. magazine, top 100 great speakers. And I mentioned that now. Before, though, I was in the Inc. magazine top 100 leadership experts. And people said to me, why didn't you publicise that more? And I said, because I looked at all the names on the list, and Bill Gates was 87 and I was number 90. And I thought, they must have got it wrong. I'll just keep quiet, and if nobody notices, I might be able to get away with it. And it wasn't until that second time I thought, you know what, maybe I belong on this list.
Yes.
It wasn't a mistake.
Right.
Maybe I belong on this list. And I still look at that because it's 100 great leadership speakers, and I actually don't do a lot of speaking. So I think I'm one of the top 100 great leadership speakers, as opposed to the great leadership speakers.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was pretty. That was a pretty nice honor for both of us to get on that list. It was really
Well,
good.
and in your case, fully deserved. And when we talk about you're saying that you write longer articles, but I read your book "Fierce Loyalty," which I absolutely loved. But it was similar to how I write and how I like to consume, just in a bigger format.
Yes.
So lots of and actually a lot of smallish chapters that you could pick up, read, put down. It wasn't something where you had to read it cover to cover and then spend 2 days thinking about it. You could read a chapter, 5, 6 pages, understand it, and then actually go and take some action of it.
Well, it's
Which,
interesting. I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and who is a leader, and I said, "Have you read the book?" And sheepishly, no. And I said, "Why not?" And I said, "Come on, let's cut the bullshit. Why not?" I really struggle to read. I really struggle to read. I mean, this is a leader. I'm struggled to read. What do you mean, struggle to read? I struggle to get the time to sit down and actually read. I said, let me help you. And you go, what? I said, I once wrote a book called Getting What You Want to Get You. To Want You.
yeah,
And he goes, yeah. I said, did you ever see that book? He goes, no. I said, it was about this big. It was about 3 inches, 4 inches tall and 3 inches wide. And he said, why? I said, because I wrote it for America's library. And he said, what's that? I said, the toilet. And I said, so I go on the principle because, I don't know anybody who reads more than me, but I
yeah,
don't read a lot at a time. So I go on the principle of bite-sized pieces. So when
yeah,
I wrote the book, I write the book, here's the chapter, and now let's split the chapter into 3 or 5 pieces
yeah,
so that you can consume that bit. And I say to people all the time, if you feel overwhelmed by the idea of reading a book, always read the contents and then go,
yeah.
oh, that looks interesting, and then go read that bit. And that's how I know that's how you write, and that's part of what I think pulls people to your work.
It's like a box of biscuits. You can open it, take the biscuits out you want, put the lid back on, and put it back for later. You don't have to sit down and eat the full box in one go. I mean, you probably choke on it, but you
Well, you
can
might
pick.
need a marathon afterwards.
You might indeed.
So your first book was called "Leadership is a Marathon, Not a Sprint," with
Yeah.
26 chapters, equalizing, of course, the 26 miles of a marathon. Tell us a little bit about that book and why you decided to write that.
So, so first of all, I just need to clarify. I lived in Germany when I wrote that, which is under the metric system, which is 42 kilometers, and I thought, I'm not writing 42 bloody chapters. We're going imperial. We're going imperial with this.
Exactly.
So actually, what happened was I did two things in parallel. In August, I decided I wanted to write a book, and after a week of no progress, I thought I'll start with a blog, and I'll just write some chapter summaries, and I'll see how I go. So I did that, and I got about 10 of those done, and I had a couple of friends who were going through chemotherapy, and then another one that signed up. I had 7 female friends that were all at various stages, and I thought I want to do something to help. I'm not a doctor. I'll raise money for charity. Shit, I'm going to have to run a marathon. which
And
was
you've
this,
done a lot of running before, right?
no. As a fat 52-year-old, I played rugby, so I used to run to get fit to play rugby. I hated running.
Right.
I just an end to being a better rugby player, and I hadn't really done a lot in the previous 10 years. And so I came with a plan and the plan was brilliant. Virgin Marathon plan. You run 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Take Saturday off. Run 20 minutes Sunday. I thought I could do that,
Right.
and then you increase by 5 minutes every week. And after 24 weeks, you're running for 4.5 hours. I thought that sounds. I don't know if I can run 5 hours, but I definitely can run for 15 minutes.
Right.
So let's start. So I
Yeah.
started doing it, and as I started doing it, I was writing blogs on bold goal setting, preparation, planning, motivation, and I noticed everything I was writing about, I was actually doing for myself as the marathon. And I thought, okay,
There's a
wow,
parallel.
there's a parallel here.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, brilliant. My book is now going to be 26 chapters. It's going to start with big, bold goal, and it's going to end up with success. And now I need 24 more topics to put in. So I looked through the blog thing, and that was interesting because there were some things I really have a strong belief in. I'm a big believer in diversity. And when you're from Leeds, and when the school I went to, 35% was Afro-Caribbean and Asian, from the age of 5, you don't know anything but diversity.
No.
And I wanted to include that, but there was no marathon parallel to diversity, so that goes out. So I had to pick things, and one of the interesting chapters I had was chapter 13, which was what got you here won't get you there. On that you get promoted as a manager. You're a leader, and you don't have the skills for it. And then you fail, Peter principle, as it were. And I thought, no, there's no way I'm going to be able to include that as a chapter, except about halfway through the training, I did my first half marathon, and then I did 2 more half marathons, and I felt brilliant. And I did a half marathon in under 2 hours, and I thought, I'm rocking and rolling it. And a friend bought me some coaching for running as a Christmas present. So I went and did the training with the coach, and the coach said, okay, let's go run and tell me about what you're doing. And I was running with him, and I said, yeah, I've done 3 half marathons, and I did one in 2 hours. So I'm feeling really good. And he looked at me and he said, you're running way too fast. There's no way. You can get to 2 hours for the half marathon. He said, but you're not going to be able to run more than another mile or 2 before you're dead.
Right.
You're running too fast. You're running anaerobically. You need to be running aerobically, burning. Anaerobically, you've got 5,000 units of energy. Fat burning, you've got 180,000, because I have got quite a bit of
You're carrying some fuel.
timber. Yeah,
You're carrying some fuel.
yes, and I have reserve tanks as well. So I actually had to go right back to the start of the training and run slower and almost start the program again. So that was actually a good parallel to what got you here won't get you there.
That's a fabulous
great,
understanding.
Great for running a half marathon, but bog all used for the marathon.
I was interviewing Clark Kokich, who was the CEO for Razorfish a couple of years ago, and one of the things he said is, if you know how to be successful today, you have no idea how to be successful tomorrow, and it's very much aligned with what you're saying. So, like you said, what got you there won't get you to the next place, and I you talked about the Peter principle. I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with it. Let people understand what it means. Let people grasp that, because I see this constantly when I'm working with leaders. Constantly, there's a person in that room who I'm going, I don't mean to be mean, but you really shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Tell us about Peter principle.
So that is a brilliant question. I do think it is important, and a lot of times people blame the wrong person as well. I find. So Peter principle is that we all get promoted until we reach a position of incompetence, and then we fail. And more often than not, we blame the person that failed, and we don't blame the person who employed them.
Right.
And if somebody doesn't have the skills for the role, don't put them into that position. And I think it is a flaw with how we recruit people, and especially on that transition from manager, technical expert, technical manager to leader. And we need to see whether people have got the right skills available in order to make that. And the other thing I see, which drives me crazy, and I've seen it so many times. If I had $1 for any time, I could probably buy the Auckland Raiders,
or at least Leeds United.
I need $5 to buy Leeds United.
Got $26 somewhere.
A number of times I've seen us where we said, you know what, Bob's really, really good. It might be a little bit early in his career, but you know what? I think with the right support, he'll be successful. And then we put him in that role, and we don't give him the support.
Right.
We wonder why he fails. And I'm sat there going, but we just said he needs to support. Where was the plan? What's the plan for the support? Who are we assigning as a mentor to him? And it's like, Don't know. Well,
Right.
you set him up for failure.
Right.
And with two choices. One, we can blame ourselves, not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
or we can fire Bob and say he was rubbish,
Right.
and then go through the exact same process again.
What's his name? Just going blank. Jack, GM leader.
Jack Welch.
Jack Welch. Yeah, thank you. I was at the Global Leadership Conference in New York a couple of years ago and saw Jack speaking. And one of the things that Jack said is nobody should ever be surprised by being fired. And I thought that was a really powerful statement because
Yeah,
he said, if you've not coached them and
yeah,
walked them through exactly how to do it and mentored them and guided them all the way through it, if
yeah,
you've done that and then they fail, they will tell you, I can't do this, I'm done. That
yeah,
nobody's going to be surprised. He said, if people are surprised, you did not support them doing what they needed to do. And it totally aligns with what it is you're saying because I think you're absolutely right. People, like Peter Principle, people are promoted to the level of their incompetence,
yeah,
but the line, if you will, of what you're talking about there is, I mean, I think it's important. I think you should promote people to beyond their level of what capability. You should promote them to the level of incompetence. But that piece that you just delivered, I think, is key and missed if you
yeah,
don't support them. If you don't, because you've been a manager, technical. Now you got to do people.
yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things we can do is, that you're good at A, B, and C. Bob's good at D and E, and his role's C, D, and E. Well, Dov, could you do C for him? And we'll just get him to do D and E. And, get teamwork where everybody's covering for each other. Whereas if you go back to what we were saying earlier, where everything's siloed and he's not getting the support, his incompetencies are left glaringly obvious
Mm-hmm.
and are a cause for failure.
Well, one of the things we talk about in my new book, Fiercely Loyal, is the need for the 4 C's,
Yeah,
right? And the first of that is cooperation, and the
yeah,
first two are cooperation and collaboration, and it's exactly what you're talking about. If we
yeah,
don't do that, we're setting up failure. And I think here's the big mistake, and I think it's the problem with corporations where people are not fiercely loyal. Everybody's going to work to do a job to make sure they keep their job, as
yeah,
opposed to being about that bigger picture.
yeah,
And in that bigger picture, I want to cooperate, I want to collaborate, I want to work with you
yeah.
because this is about more than me looking good. This is about something we believe in.
Yep. And you really see that, for me, you really see that in sports when you get a really good team, somebody misses his man, and the rest of the team don't go, oh, well, we're going to concede points there. He's let us down. The good teams will go, bugger it, it's not my job, but I'll chip in and cover it. Whereas
Absolutely.
if you just say, not my responsibility, you're not going to, the sum of the parts will never be greater than the sum of the whole if
Right.
people don't collaborate
You
and
know,
cooperate.
with
And one of
our background, I have a great example of that
yeah,
because I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember George Best very well. I'm sure you do too. Georgie
absolutely.
Best playing for Man United, and he was a diva. He was a spectacular player. Let's make no mistake. He was an amazing player. But if George didn't show up to play, and George often didn't show up to play because he was a drunk, and he was a
Yeah,
drug addict, and he certainly didn't mind fooling around a bit. So George was a diva. He got on the pitch and he played magnificently, and the team was there to support him being a diva. Therefore,
yeah,
when he was gone, Man United fell apart.
yeah,
I mean, and so it was like, it was, you can't do the same things in footy/soccer that you can do in rugby. But I'm
yeah,
telling you, there were definitely people who went out and go, we got to take George out of the game because the
yeah.
team's done. And it's that same thing. It's not coming together for that collaboration.
Well, it's interesting. I wrote a blog article on this. It was actually my most popular article, and it was about teamwork and about how in the Soccer World Cup in Brazil, you had the 4 teams in the semi-finals. There was Holland with Aaron Robben, who was fantastic. There was Brazil with Neymar, who was fantastic, and then Argentina with Lionel Messi. And then there was Germany, where nobody really stood out. And yet Germany thumped Brazil 8-1, 8-0.
Yeah.
And then they went through to the final. And on the day of the final, one of their players, Sami Khedira, pulled a muscle in the warm up, and they just subbed somebody else in, and they played to exactly the same level and won because it was all about teamwork and everybody playing together rather than Lionel Messi's fantastic. Please take care of it, because when he has an off day, you're screwed.
Exactly.
Whereas if you get a contribution from 11 people, then one person can fall down. You're still getting 90% of what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you, because of course the show is leadership and loyalty. What do you think is missing from your point of view? Whether it's something you've learned yourself or something you've applied or whatever it is. What do you think is missing in keeping people loyal?
For me, what I found is that loyalty is a two-way street. And if you are not loyal to your people, then they will absolutely. Why should they be loyal to you?
Absolutely.
So what I in my last job, when I had a team of 1,000 with 14 direct reports, I tried to show every day that I cared about them and that I had their best interests at heart. And by doing that, whenever I had a problem, people would step up and step in to help me. And in that same company, one of my bosses, he didn't do that. If you were in trouble, you were on your own. And he was German company, German approach. These are the rules. And if you breach the rule, you get punished.
Right.
And it's and they almost had this. Now I'll teach you a lesson.
Right.
Attitude. So some of the punishment was excessive. But it didn't breed loyalty. Whereas if my team made a mistake, I would go up and say, okay, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Not I'll punish you,
right,
so that you won't do this again. And what was interesting was my boss got into a situation where he had problems with his boss, and he needed everybody to pull around him.
Good
and we just stepped back and went, sorry, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. I think that is a eloquently stated clarity around what it takes, because I think that is so missed. I have this question thrown at me all the time. How can I make my people more loyal? Be more loyal.
Yeah.
I give simple examples. Like, you want your partner to be more loving. Try being more loving.
Absolutely.
Right? You want your partner to listen to you. Then shut the hell up and listen to them.
Yeah, don't just wait for your turn to talk.
Right. So it's this, I for me, because my background around psychology and philosophy and those backgrounds. For me, you've seen in the book that I state very clearly, there's no separation between your personal life and your professional life. What you do is what you do. And so, if you want to look at the problems in your life, you go, well, how come my marriage is in trouble? Well, look at your business. How come my business is in trouble? How come my leadership's in trouble? Look at your marriage. Look at your kids. Whatever it is. It's all the same thing. And that understanding of, if this is good advice for a relationship with your partner, with your husband, your wife, your equal partner, whatever it is, it's probably pretty good advice for you working with your team.
So this was the shortest blog post I ever wrote. I wrote a blog on reward and recognition, and why it was important to recognise the good things that our teams have done. And I got great feedback on it, apart from one person. And I came home, and my wife was, so? And I was like, so? She went, well? I was like, well, what? And she went, do you notice anything different?
I know where this is going.
You've done your hair, haven't you? No. I was like, help me out. She said, I've completely cleaned the house. And I said, well, you always do that. She said, where's my reward and recognition? I don't want you to write any more blogs on this shit until you start practicing it at home.
Good for her.
So that was the blog I wrote.
When you see her, give her a hug from me. That's fantastic.
So to write a blog called "I'm not allowed to write any more until I start practicing this shit at home." but
Fantastic.
but one of the things that, for me, one of the answers to a lot of the questions that you could ask me is, how do you get more loyalty? How do you get more trust? How do you get more accountability? The underlying principle for leadership is leadership defines culture. If you want more loyalty, be more loyal. If you want more trust, trust people. And if you want accountability, be accountable.
Yeah.
Be accountable. A great friend of mine, Mark McGregor, who's a leadership coach in Germany, he was brought in, and the coach wanted more openness, honesty, and transparency. And he organised this big offsite with 20 direct reports. And it got to lunchtime, and the boss went off to a meeting somewhere, and Mark went to lunch with the rest of the team, and he just said, "Guys, you're not interested. What the hell's going on?" Because yeah, I'm getting paid, but I actually like my job, and you're making it unpleasant for me. There's not, you're not interested. This is boring and a waste of my time. What's going on? And he said, well, he wants more honesty, openness, and transparency. Yet his wife's pregnant, and he's screwing his secretary. You know,
Ta-da.
and he
Yep.
said he had to. When the boss came back from dinner, he said from his meeting, he said, "You know what? I'm going to meet with him." He said, sat him down. He said, "I'm going to tell you something, and you're probably going to fire me, but it is what it is. This is why your team are not engaging. You want openness and honesty, and yet you're screwing your secretary while your wife's pregnant, and your team don't respect you." And he
Exactly.
said, the boss said, "Okay," came out, stood in front of his team, and said, "I apologise. You're absolutely right. It is disgraceful. I'm going to stop doing it, and I need to be the example that I want everybody else to follow." And they said they carried on with the rest of the training for the afternoon. I don't know how it went on or whether the boss changed, but that was the reality of it. You want me, do as I say, not as I do.
Well, and let's face it, that, you and I talk about the new form of leadership and how important that you can't do the old form, the command and control. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. Don't do as I do. Oh, do as I say.
Yeah,
Shut up. Do as I say. I mean, that is so done. Those guys are such freaking dinosaurs. Now, I mean, you
didn't
know this because you just work with them.
and
There's
it
still
didn't work.
dinosaurs around.
Yeah, and it didn't work before either. It's
No,
not like it was a fantastic model. It didn't work.
no, it didn't work. I think the difference was you got away with it before. It didn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
It didn't create loyalty. It didn't create high levels of productivity or innovation or any of the things we're talking about. It didn't
yeah,
do that. But you got away with it, and the reason they got away with it back then is because people were tied into security around their jobs, and
yeah.
millennials are not.
No,
Millennials get there is no security, so screw you. I'm not putting up with this.
yeah.
I'm going to walk away before you fire me anyway. I've already got 4 or 5 people interested. I've already got like Gordon. I've got 5 people waiting to give me a book deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is not a new idea. Julius Caesar walked with his troops, slept with his troops, knew the names of his troops because he knew that when you go into battle, if it's starting to get a bit hairy, we've two choices: we can stand and fight, or we could run.
Right.
And he wanted them to stay and fight. It is a command and control structure, but there is still freedom within it, and it's a model that he implemented, but not one that in the last 2,000 years has seen a lot of light of day.
Well, it's interesting because actually I talk about Julius Caesar, as you know, in the front of the book under the section of notable leaders. And I give
Yeah,
exactly that example about how he was right there with his soldiers until he wasn't. And
yeah,
they followed him everywhere until he got involved with Cleopatra and all that nonsense.
yeah,
And it all went down faster than a lead balloon
yeah.
because he stopped being connected to the soldiers.
Correct.
Exactly the same with Alexander the Great.
Yeah,
With every one of those leaders, if you
yeah.
don't stay connected to the people, that's when it all falls apart. So
Absolutely.
it's such a great example.
And as I say, and it comes back from 2, 3,000 years ago, and so it's not a new model.
No, it's
It's
not a
one
new model. It's not a new
looking.
model. So I want you to leave us with a couple of tips, and then I'm going to ask you two more questions that are quick questions. Give us a couple of punchy tips for leadership that are going to really have people look differently and then take action differently.
So my new book's coming out, which is fast leadership, and it's about focus, accountability, simplicity, and transparency. And the first thing you need to do is focus, and focus is about what, and you need to have a clear picture of what success looks like, and you have to communicate that to your teams so that they can understand it. Because if they can understand it, then they can make decisions that are the right decisions. If they don't know what the goal is, or it's a bit fuzzy, you're putting them in a position where they could end up doing the wrong thing.
Right.
And when you do the wrong thing, it matters not how well you do it. You know, as you say, when you climb the ladder of success, if it's leaning against the wrong wall, it doesn't matter how quickly you climb it, you're going to fail. So make sure you get your focus right. Focus is absolutely the first step. And then the other one I would say comes back to transparency. And transparency for me is about operational performance. And there's so much data. We need to have real-time data reports on people's performance. And I can tell you, when I worked in Germany, I had this, and we used to review performance every month. The statistics came out, and we've great examples of this. Sport, every single sport, the day after the game, there are league tables. And we don't have to discuss, did you do a good job or a bad job? There's a league table. Mm-hmm. And if you're bottom of the league table, you know that every single week, and you have transparency into your performance. So we're not going to come to your year-end review and say, Dov, I'm firing you. You know that because you've been bottom of the table every single week.
Absolutely.
So good, clear transparency. And the thing about that is that you don't then have to be confrontational. All you need to do is, you just put the league table down and just say, you're bottom, what are we going to do about it? There's no emotion, it's all fact-based.
Yes. And
in a lot of businesses, you don't have to worry about who's top or bottom because we can actually have everybody top.
Right.
So get that transparency and then work with everybody to get everybody to that top level. And if you do that, it'll revolutionize your results. So crystal clear clarity and communication on what we need to do, and then accurate performance reports on how people are doing. And
Fantastic.
Those will revolutionize results.
Yeah. And again, not new stuff,
No.
just really practical. Apply it, make it work. It's not difficult unless you're stuck in the old way.
Correct. It's not rocket science.
No.
It's not rocket science.
I don't think anything that we're offering is rocket science. I think it's revolutionary, but it's not rocket science, and that's the distinction.
Well, one of the things with the S of fast is simplicity, and we do have a tendency to overcomplicate things, and as soon as we overcomplicate things, we put ourselves in a position where we choose not to do it. So we try to create massively complicated performance reports, and we go, forget that. No,
Right.
Don't do that. Give people. When I worked for Henkel, we had 3 targets for a 48,000 employee company, 20 billion revenue, and it was 14% profit margin, 3 to 6% organic sales growth, and then 50% of our revenue came from emerging markets. Those were the 3 things that everybody was judged on.
Right.
Crisp, clear, simple, clear focus. And the company took their performance from 10% profit to 14% profit. And it's now probably at 16, 17% because we had everybody pulling in the same direction. And you can't pull in the same direction if you don't know what that direction is.
Absolutely. Clarity of focus. Great input. Great input. So here's my second to last question. I'm going to make you God. Not God of everybody, but God of leaders.
I am from Yorkshire, so we do believe.
Yeah, of course. I understand the cultural levels of this. However, I'm gonna make you God of leadership. My second to last question to you, as I said, I'm gonna make you God of leadership. And as God of leadership, you get to create a commandment by which all leaders must live. What would it be?
Team first.
Team first.
Team first.
Very good. I like it. So last final question is remind our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about Gordon Tredgold and what it is you do, how to bring you in to speak for their organization, how they can hire you to consult for them and take them to the next level of success.
So you can get hold of me at GordonTredgold.com, or you can check out my blog, leadershipprinciples.com. Leadership-principles.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at GordonTredgold.com.
And you're also on LinkedIn and Facebook and all the usual places as well, right?
I'm all over social media.
Yeah, Gordon is big on social media.
And I'm very fortunate, which I find bizarre. I'm the only Gordon Tredgold.
Yeah, it's not a common name.
No, but if you put in my son's name, Dan Tredgold, who's a musician, you get 20 Dan Tredgolds. I'm the only Gordon Tredgold.
Well, you are the only one, my friend. You are the only one. So, Gordon, I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks for being with us today. It was great, and you really delivered some really great gems. I've been on your blog. I've read your stuff. It's highly valuable. I recommend it to everybody. Make sure you go there. As you know, you probably know, Gordon has interviewed me. I've been on interviews with him. We have a lot in common, aside from the fact that we are arch enemies when it comes to counties. But, you know, if you find value in what it is that I offer, then you'll certainly find value in what it is that Gordon offers. Great stuff. Make sure you check it out. Again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing the show with everybody you know. Make sure that you do check out our other shows and you can find us on Podomatic. Of course, there you can share the show. You can share the show on iTunes. And, of course, we love it when you do your reviews and you leave your comments about the show. That's always valuable to us. Sincerely appreciate it. Hope we've added a ton of value to you today. Until next time, live with courage.